everyone. Welcome to Telling Tall Tales the Right Way. I am your host, Heather Asiyanbi. I am the editor of best-selling. I'm doing this live, y'all, so give me a minute. And it's been a minute since I recorded one of these. I really am a little behind the eight ball here. So I am the editor of several best-selling adult nonfiction books. I'm a ghostwriter and a journalist, currently working in a hyperlocal news site. I am also a certified master storyteller, and I have been telling stories on digital platforms for what feels like 100 years now. I love stories, and there are some basic elements to every great story. Now, we went over that in season 1, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background. So the basic elements of every great story, right? You need a very clear beginning, middle, and end. You need very well-developed characters who may experience growth or who suffer the consequences for not growing. And you need a primary conflict and resolution. You need that big payoff. So what's the big problem, and then what's the payoff in the end that makes you feel really satisfied that you read or watched this story unfold. So today, what we're going to talk about is we are going to talk about season 2 of Lioness. Now, I don't know if it's on Paramount Plus, so I don't know if you're familiar with this show, but Lioness basically tells the story of this like super elite fighting squad. I don't know if they're Army or Marines. I don't know. But the head of the unit is played by Zoe Saldana, who is she is tough as nails, but she is also human, right? She's not a robotic soldier. She flexes her muscle when she needs to, because again, very male-dominated arenas that she's in. Plus, she's a family person. She has a husband who is a pediatric oncologist, I believe, and 2 daughters. Now, there's some home strife and all that that's covered in season 1. It does come through to season 2. The reason I don't want to talk about season 1, I feel like season 1 told a really good story. It had a very definitive beginning, middle, and end. The characters were very well drawn. Everybody had, their very distinct characteristics. They went through they followed their own growth trajectory during the season, and it ended with a nice little bow. We don't know if we're going to see. Let me explain the premise of the show. Lioness stands for a female soldier in particular who is brought into the unit temporarily to achieve a singular goal. And so the Lioness they had in season 1 completed her mission. And at the end, she's like, I'm never doing this again. This is not happening. And she kind of exits stage left. Season 2 begins, and it starts with the kidnapping of a U.S. Congresswoman by a Mexican cartel. So Joe, that is Zoe Saldana's, her character's name. Joe is brought in, her unit is brought in to rescue the Congresswoman. And what we come to find out is that the Mexican cartels are bringing in Chinese intelligence officers to destabilize the U.S., which, I mean, today is March. What is today? March 3rd, 2025. And if that is not a little apropos for this time period, I'm just saying. Okay, enough with the politics. That is not this show. So now they have a mission, right? They need to infiltrate this one particular cartel, and they know that there is a soldier, a female helicopter pilot, who is, I believe, in Iraq. Maybe I forget. Doesn't matter. She's in the Middle East. And they know that it's her uncle who's a member of the cartel. Now, she doesn't trust these people when she meets them. That's fine. Oh wait, I'm still showing this. Sorry. Okay, here we go. She doesn't trust these officers. She's like, I don't know you people. I'm not talking to you. That's fine. Whatever. So, but she's recruited, and then then the truth comes out. She knows how to speak Spanish. She knows what her family does. She's aware of all these things, but she joined the army specifically to separate herself, put a lot of distance between her and what her family does. No problems, right? Okay, great. But here's where it gets a little interesting. So I'm going to bring back this slide, but I'm going to go to the next one. Okay, so this young woman right here, Cruz, she was the Lioness of season 1. She's brought in because this young woman, I forget what is her name? Josie. Josefina Carrillo is her name. So she's brought in because it's her uncle who heads up the cartel. Great. So they show how they get her to, create this cover story of how she is dishonorably discharged from the army on some BS, and she's forced to go home. Now, she hasn't been home in, I don't know, let's just say 2 to 3 years. But her father, okay, let me back up. Her family lives in Texas in this opulent house that can't possibly be paid for by the type of law her father practices, right? He's like an immigration attorney or something like that. So they clearly know, the army is aware, he's getting money for handling cartel business, right? That's what's happening. So Josie here is brought in to talk with her, on this cover story, to get her dad to talk about the cartel business and the goal is to flip him. So the goal is to flip him to the U.S.'s side so that he can be a double agent, still communicating with his brother, the leader of the cartel, and then feeding that intelligence through to the U.S. military so that they can either intercept maybe some of the way the Chinese hackers and intelligence are being brought through, or whatever their goal is. Anyway, that's not super germane to this. Anyway, tells a great story. I love the way Lioness sets up. So it's kind of okay, so let's go back to the elements of every great story. The what of the story is the whole plot. What is actually happening? And then the why is, why are we suddenly dropped into these people's lives, right? So before the viewers come in to watch this mission either fail or succeed, these characters have lives of their own. They're going through their daily things, they're doing family, whatever they're doing, right? So why are we suddenly brought into their lives, and what is the point of all of that right now? So that's where I'm going with this. So the what is bringing Chinese intelligence through the cartels in Mexico into the U.S. to destabilize America. Okay. The why, obviously, they need a lioness. This is why they need a lioness, because she's related to the head of the cartel doing all this people smuggling. I guess, I don't know the proper terminology. I'm not in the military. Now let's go through a couple of other characters. So Caitlin Meade is played by Nicole Kidman. She is a senior CIA officer who oversees Joe, that's Zoe Saldana, oversees her unit. There are a bunch of other characters, higher ups who huff and puff and get mad when things don't go right. Zoe Saldana, Joe has to assert her dominance by, recounting her expertise and all these other things, when, and I'm just going to put out there, predominantly male officers try to impose on her what they think should happen. And, we all know how that typically goes, right? When men are trying to mansplain and women have been, doing all this all the time. Anyway, what they discover is that 2 Chinese nuclear scientists are en route to Iran. Okay, so now we've got the Mexican thing going on. Wait, I need to back up. Okay, so Josie and Cruz, posing as just friends, although they do turn into more, end up going to Josie's dad's house, where she tries to get him to flip by telling him the truth about everything. And he, of course, gets very angry and is like, that's not going to happen, whatever. And they, because they've got all these things, then Caitlin Mead, Nicole Kidman, her character comes in with a higher up, and they broker a deal with Josie's dad. They're like, here's what we want you to present to your brother. We will pay all this money. We will, give safety to family, all these like ticking boxes of like what would go into them helping the US not, get these Chinese intelligence officers. At the same time, okay, so now Nicole Kidman's character takes over this whole cartel thing, because instead of flipping Josie's dad to inform on his brother, now they're just going to make a flat out deal. They're just going to make a flat out deal. Like, that's just how that's going to go. Now we get a subplot. Dun, 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 the subplot. So instead of Josie and Cruz and Joe's team continuing to do this cartel business, now we find out that 2 Chinese nuclear scientists are going to Iran. So the Lioness team decide they're being deployed to the Middle East to halt these nuclear scientists getting to Iran. Okay. This is where it kind of falls apart for me. I am totally down with the story up until the point where, okay, I'm trying to think of how to say this. So this is like a limit. These are very short seasons. There's only like 6 or 8 episodes in each of these seasons. So it's very tight storytelling, but this is like, now we're on like episode 6, let's just say, and we've got 2 more to go. And now it's totally turned on a dime. And I'm not really sure why it had to go that way. Like, why are we so tightly focused on this family dynamic, which echoes a family dynamic, frankly, from season 1, albeit in a different way. But we've got this very tightly focused family dynamic, and now all of a sudden we need a lot of action. That's what it felt like. It felt like it was a show that couldn't rely on the intellectual and international drama of the storyline, and had to fall back on action movie tropes to keep the season moving. And that's where I kind of was like, I don't know, if you're of a certain age, you'll know this, like, one of these things is not like the other. That's what this was doing. So now Josie no longer is like, she doesn't have to talk to her dad anymore. She ain't got to talk to her uncle, none of that stuff. They go to Iraq or the Middle East. And now they get into this big firefight. They get pinned down. We think that all these, enemy forces, and I don't really want to say enemy, but I don't know a better word to use. All these enemy forces, they're pinning them down. They're going to come at them. And then, planes, trains, and automobiles arrive to save the day. Meanwhile, in Mexico, Nicole Kidman's character, and I cannot remember his name. Anyway, her higher up person. So there's Joe, and then Nicole Kidman, and then she's got a higher up, and then of course he does too. Anyway, they're in Mexico with Josie's dad, who is holding a Chinese intelligence officer. Like, they've got him tied to a chair. He's blindfolded. He's got a gag on. But it's just like the weirdest, quickest glimpse of this person. It's like, okay, so you see me right on your screen, but you see, like, there's, like way back down on like see that? Okay, so see that little hole? Okay, slight aside, I tried to put a cat toy on my wall for my cat, and he didn't really care. And when I tried to take it off, it ripped a bunch of. Anyway, that's not important. But anyway, like, see how little that is? If I didn't point it out, you wouldn't notice. That's how quick the glimpses of this Chinese intelligence person tied to a chair at this humongous hacienda compound in Mexico for the cartel. So, a little bit of a standoff outside because they have Australian mercenaries as like their guards, which, okay. They go inside the hacienda, and they're like reminding Josie's dad, like, don't forget, X, Y, and Z. This is the things. These are the things. Josie's dad is like, yep, got it. No worries. He walks up to his brother. They hug. How you doing? Blah, 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 blah. He pulls out a gun and shoots his brother in the head, like right under the jaw. And he's like, okay, I'm in charge now. So all the people there who worked for his brother are now like, yes, you're the boss. Got it. We're good with that. Super cool. He tells Nicole Kidman and her supervisor, excuse me, so you want that guy, right? You want the Chinese guy? And they're like, yeah, we want the Chinese guy. And he's like, all right, go ahead and take him. Our deal stands though, right? I still get all this money. I still get all this protection, blah, blah, blah. They're like, yep, that's it. Okay. So now we go back to the Middle East, and Josie and Cruz are injured because their helicopter falls. They're getting pinned down by fire. And then, of course, they are rescued and everything. And I just, okay. You all know I despise lazy storytelling. Not that I don't, occasionally stumble into that myself, but I really, really try not to do that. But here's the thing. This is what annoys me so much. All right. Cruz was the Lioness in season 1. Her story, very definitive, beginning, middle, and end. We stayed tightly focused on her mission, the individuals she encountered, the cover story she had to spin and memorize and really get done. And we saw too the complications that come of missions of, quote unquote, international importance, but also that might be a little short-sighted because of the consequences that can come from some of these actions, such as, let's talk about, and this is history, this isn't politics. The U.S. backed the Taliban in their war, in Afghanistan's war, when Russia was trying to invade Afghanistan. The U.S. backed the Taliban. Well, then we saw what happened, right? 9/11 happened. We were enmeshed in a war that I don't even think it's technically ended over there, even though our troops have been withdrawn for the most part. So actions can lead to unintended consequences in the future, or even if they are predictable or foreseen, it's the very definition of a dilemma, right? Where each choice is equally bad. Each choice is equally bad. So what do we do? So Cruz has her very definitive storyline. Her mission is complete. She doesn't, she can foresee a possible outcome. She's not happy with it. She's like, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. Whereas we have Josie, who is kind of removed completely from the equation of the whole point of why this season even started. And so Taylor Sheridan is the creator of this show, and he also created Yellowstone, and I think there's another one. And he occasionally like will guest star in his own shows, and he does in this one too. But he's an action guy. He is an action guy, so I can see why there's action in them. I don't have a problem with that as long as the action scenes complement the storyline, like that they're not using them as a rickety bridge to connect one plot line to the next. And because they didn't really have that for this season, they couldn't really connect there was really no connection between the Middle East, like 2 Chinese nuclear scientists going to Iran, and the cartels smuggling in Chinese intelligence to destabilize the US. Like, I mean, maybe there's like the thinnest of threads. It's a very thin thread. But the way the show addresses it is it all of a sudden, it's like you've got this show coming. It's like, dude, show. And then, whoo, it's cut. Like, whoosh. Mexican plot over here, Middle East plot over here. And nary the two shall meet, other than the 2 lionesses, lionesses, that's a lot of S's, 2 lionesses, becoming basically teammates and partners. I mean, maybe their romantic relationship lasts beyond this. I don't know. We'll see what happens in season 3, if there is a season 3, which I have not looked up yet. But all in all, I think it's a great show, and I really like the way that Zoe Saldana plays Jo. She is multifaceted. She is a mother who loves her children, but she feels this incredible sense of duty, and she is very much a typical. Okay. They've kind of flipped the script with her character, because usually we have this like strong, silent man, soldier dude type whose wife is holding it down at home, right? And he's like, duty above everything. I gotta go. Well, even when Jo is hurt in a side mission that was to rescue some human trafficking victims, she's in the hospital and she's just had surgery. She almost died. And her husband is like, okay, well, you're going to come home. And she's like, no, I got to leave. I have a mission. And he's like, what the, right? And he legitimately loses his, and we don't know like how they're going to be when she goes home. But of course, she goes home at the end of the mission and she's like, I didn't know if I was going to have a home to come home to. And he's like, of course you do. And he hugs her and folds her up and they go in the house, right? So happy-ish ending. But they flipped it a little bit where, she's now supposed to be this strong, silent type. But I think she's a little bit more complex than that, which I really, really like. And then Nicole Kidman's character, she is kind of an ice queen, but also has a heart. And she's married, and her husband have the oddest relationship. He's very high up, I believe, in the oil and business world, but he's got a lot of connections in the US government. So like, anyway, it's a thing. Anyway, it's a weird dynamic is all I'm going to say. But you wonder too, like, could that be real? I don't know. I'm not a spy high up in some organization who has to juggle these things. I don't know. I just like the way that their relationship is written. So all that to say, if you're going to watch Lioness, watch season 1 for sure. and you will notice a vast difference in the storytelling compared to season 2. I'm not saying season 2 is a complete loss. Watch it. I enjoyed it still, but it was a little discordant, right? The last couple episodes were a little, they didn't gel. They didn't seem to fit with the first few episodes. So that's all I will say. Okay. Thank you for being with me. I am so happy to be back, and we're going to talk about so many things. If I can get the video to like render correctly, I have an amazing conversation with Dwan Johnson. He is an actor, a working actor out of Hollywood, and he sat down with me to talk about Shogun, which if you haven't seen it, oh my God, watch it. And then I sat down with our very own Dr. Tachi, and we went all in on Queen Charlotte. So that's a two-parter. So I'm excited. So thanks for joining me this season, and I will see you next week. Bye.